Tonight on Greater Boston, 5 years after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico, much of the island is again without power and access to clean water, laying bare lessons clearly not learned in a place whose people are citizens of the United States. So why the continued apathy? Former San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulin Cruz of Trump Twitter battle fame joins me. Then President Biden's declaration that COVID is over has sparked a major debate in the public health community. Two leading health experts join me on that. Exactly 5 years since Hurricane Maria battered Puerto Rico, knocking out power to many on the island for months, some for more than a year. A far smaller Hurricane Fiona managed to cut power to more than 1 million people and access to clean water for almost half the population before even making landfall. It was a reminder to many of the reality Puerto Rican residents have long lived with, a fragile infrastructure and little help from the mainland U.S., a country of which Puerto Rico is a part, a territory. It's a fact far too many seem to constantly forget, even after Maria and a federal response that included a paper towel tossing photo op from then President Donald Trump and a Twitter battle with then San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulin Cruz, a battle she did not wage quietly.
While the American people have had a big heart, President Trump has had a big mouth, and he has used it to insult the people of Puerto Rico. Mr. Trump, do your job. Lives are at stake. This is not about politics. This is not about your ego.
While Trump and Cruz are both out of office this time around, many of the core issues remain. I'm joined by Carmen Yulin Cruz, who's now a fellow at Mount Holyoke College, focused on leadership. Mayor, it's great to see you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I know you've been in regular touch with leaders and others in Puerto Rico. What are conditions on the ground?
Well, as you mentioned this morning, 80% of the people did not have electricity. What I want people to understand is that we don't want electricity to take hot showers. There are people already clamoring because they are not able to take their dialysis, right, or they're not able to take their nebulizers or use oxygen because their generators are giving up. And like you mentioned, 55% of the people do not have water. In many places in Puerto Rico, when you lose the electrical power, you lose the ability to get water. My parents, for example, that live in a town in the metropolitan San Juan area, not in San Juan, just received water and electricity this morning. In my apartment, where I still hold in Puerto Rico, which is in San Juan, we have scarcely water but no electricity. So things are very touch and go right now.
How far along in the recovery from Maria were most parts of the country, the infrastructure, the other things that were so badly damaged?
Well, obviously not far enough. And you know, it was true that President Trump did a lot of things to curtail the aid that needed to get to Puerto Rico, even withholding it. But it's also true that 5 years have been lost of making sure that especially the microgrid in Puerto Rico is robustly reconstructed, and that transformation happens from just oil into solar power, which is of course a lot more resilient than just oil. It is evident that we as a society did not do everything that could be done, and this was in the hands of the central government of Puerto Rico, which is why I am calling this administration to channel all of the aid through the 78 municipalities directly to the mayor so that they can do things faster and better.
Yeah, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but when I read the other day a comment of yours, I assumed you were manipulating the numbers. I apologize. I heard you say something like $9 billion was allotted to deal with the electrical grid, finally, under Trump, and then only $40 million had been spent. And I went to check it. $40 million has been spent, and it went further. $21 billion was allotted for overall public projects. Only 2% of that has been allotted, according to GAO's Homeland Security Office. Where is the incredible disconnect, Mayor?
And first of all, it's interesting because you're right in disbelieving that. One cannot fathom that that would happen with the dire situation that Puerto Ricans lived after the passing of Hurricane Maria. The disconnect is a couple of things. Number one is it doesn't matter who does it. Whenever you weaponize for political reasons, these things are going to happen. And the central government of Puerto Rico has really hoarded the funds, saying, no, we're going to use them, we're going to distribute them. And that adds another layer of bureaucracy, number one. Number two, there doesn't seem to be and I'm going to call it a cookie cutter, robust program for reconstruction. For example, if we have to build and reconstruct community centers around Puerto Rico, why do we have to have one community center being designed by one architect in one town and the same thing replicated in 77 other towns? So there are things that could be done differently. And the other thing is really the lack of will to break through the barriers that need to be pushed away if we want to look for permanent solution to recurring problems, and the structural changes that need to take place, like the one that needs to take place in the electrical grid. And that's on us. That's not on the federal government.
You know, the rhetoric, as an outsider, the rhetoric has obviously been far stronger and more supportive from the Biden administration. Has there been a dramatic improvement in terms of support and aid?
There is one great improvement, which is that the goal is to save lives. And when you have that goal, everything else falls into place. Of course, only yesterday it stopped raining in Puerto Rico. And right now, the first 72 to the first week, you're really on a rescue mission, which is why some people, FEMA just pushed a lot of people down to Puerto Rico for the rescue mission. Right now, there's another expected to rain the entire weekend in Puerto Rico, which will make matters even worse with a lot of flooding. So what we are looking for is there is 300 people from FEMA there in Puerto Rico, but the aid has to start flowing. So far, what I hear from mayors is that has not taken place.
You know, I'm not the only person who, when we heard Trump's comments about Puerto Rico after Maria, were pretty clear he had no idea what the relationship of Puerto Rico was to the United States, no idea that they were citizens. And while maybe his behavior, I think it's fair to say from my perspective, was born of both ignorance and racism, because Puerto Ricans aren't from Norway, for example. On the ignorance front, I'm not so sure, I don't have data to present, I'm not so sure the American people understand much better that even with fewer rights, that people in Puerto Rico are citizens of the United States. Am I wrong in that regard?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think we struggle ourselves to understand our relationship with the United States, especially in times like this. For example, we don't understand why the USVI, which is a few miles from Puerto Rico, has a total exemption for energy purposes from the Jones Act, but we don't have an exemption from the Jones Act at a time like this, let alone forever.
What's the Jones Act do, quickly, Mary?
The Jones Act requires everything that comes into Puerto Rico to either come through a flag, through a ship that has a U.S. flag,
I see, okay.
or if it's a foreign flag, they have to decide which port they go to first. So, of course, you know, if you have 3.2 million people and you have 300 million people, you're going to come to the U.S. port first. So it is a difficult relationship. We are U.S. citizens by birth since 1941. If you ask most Puerto Ricans, they're going to tell you, no, I'm Puerto Rican, and we define ourselves as Puerto Rican. We have a big population of Puerto Ricans there in Boston and all over the United States. But times like this make it a lot clearer that, and I don't like to talk about the political status of Puerto Rico in a crisis, but I also don't want to be disrespectful to you. Times like this call for a real consensus on moving forward a process of self-determination for the people of Puerto Rico. Well, the options are clearly defined, and then a new relationship can be established, because I think it's safe to say most Puerto Ricans want to have some sort of a relationship with the United States.
But you don't support statehood. What is that relationship that you think would make it less likely that nightmares like this would happen again?
Well, I prefer a free association compact like the U.S. has with other former territories. But more important than what I prefer is what is going to give Puerto Rico the tools to depend less on federal money and to have an economy that can participate more in the U.S. economy. For example, many years ago, Puerto Rico was the mecca of pharmaceuticals. 13 out of the 21 most used products and drugs in the world were made in Puerto Rico. Most people do not know that the majority of the IVs that are used for the armed forces are made in Puerto Rico. So we can contribute to the United States by becoming a pharmaceutical mecca, but also by holding our own. I think it's fair to say that, for example, when you look at the electrical grid and you look at the data, $9 billion and only $20 million used, we need to look at that very differently. Right now, if you look at Puerto Rico, the grid is just one big grid. So let's divide that grid into 4 grids so that if the light and electricity goes down in Ponce, in the southern part, it doesn't affect San Juan in the northern part.
You know, before you go, of all the video that I've seen, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to the passing of the Queen, but usually the story of Puerto Rico was in a little box in the bottom right-hand corner. But in the moments when Puerto Rico got the attention it deserved, I can't erase the image of a man standing in the middle of ruin a few days ago, practically crying, describing what it was like to have spent 5 years rebuilding his neighborhood. And as he and his neighbors approached completion, or at least an important stage, it all came tumbling down. To get through that requires a huge amount of resilience. I don't have it in me. How do your friends and family, how do they get through nightmare after nightmare and continue to survive and hopefully prosper?
And let me put this in perspective. In the 5 years we have gone through Zika, chikungunya, 2 major hurricanes, political unrest, bankruptcy, 2 major earthquakes, the pandemic, and now this. So if you look at resilient in the Webster Dictionary, there should be a picture of Puerto Rico right there, and that should redefine what resiliency is. You take a hold of your faith. You look at your neighbors, and you know that there's no plan B, that you have to do what must be done to push on, because after all, the strength lies within each one of us. I'm going to Puerto Rico tomorrow on Friday to spend a week there to help fellow mayors. If it's a broom that I have to pick to get some of the mud out of the street, that's what I will do. But it is at times like this where the human spirit soars real high. But the thing is that we need to look for permanent solutions to these recurring problems.
Understood.
Because there is some sort of fatigue. The soul of the Puerto Rican people is ready to fight, but it's also fatigued and saddened.
Good luck to you, and good luck on your trip. Thanks so much. It's really good to see you.
Thank you very much for not forgetting us. Appreciate it.
Thanks. We also wanted to offer a quick update on the legal questions we talked about Monday surrounding the group of migrants who were tricked into getting on a plane to Martha's Vineyard. Lawyers for civil rights and the nonprofit Alianza Americas have officially filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of the migrants against Florida Governor DeSantis and the others who have claimed credit for the scheme.
We represent not only the stranded migrants in the vineyard, but all similarly situated migrants across the country who have been fraudulently induced by Governor DeSantis in Florida to cross state lines through misrepresentations. And we are seeking a nationwide injunction to block Governor DeSantis in Florida from engaging in these activities which endanger human lives.
In a move that really takes chutzpah, DeSantis responded by calling the lawsuit political theater. Next up, the presidential declaration that sparks celebration, confusion, and anger, depending on who you asked.
The pandemic is over. We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over.
And ever since Biden uttered those words, the medical community and beyond has been debating. The president later clarified his statement slightly, saying the pandemic is no longer where it was. And the next day, his chief medical advisor, Anthony Fauci, was even more cautious in his assessment.
We are not where we need to be if we're going to be able to, quote, live with the virus, because we know we're not going to eradicate it.
Right now, the daily average for new cases is over 54,000. That's just the people reporting their cases. There are around 400 deaths per day. New hospitalizations are hovering over 4,000. And the only underwhelming number, not even 35% of people who are eligible for a booster have gotten at least one. I'm joined now by William Hanage, Associate Professor of Epidemiology at Harvard's Chan School of Public Health and a member of the school's Center for Communicable Disease Dynamics. Dr. Megan Ranney is an emergency physician, academic dean of the Brown University School of Public Health. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. Ranney, starting with you, is Joe Biden right? Is the pandemic over?
I wish he were right, but both as an emergency physician and a public health professional, I know, unfortunately, that the pandemic is still going on. Listen, we are absolutely in a different phase. Our lived experience is different from it was 6 months ago, much less a year or 2 years ago, thanks to vaccines, boosters, improvements in treatment, and improved ventilation. But the reality is there are still a lot of folks who are getting sick every day, a lot of folks who are dying. And the World Health Organization itself is still quite clear that we are in the midst of a pandemic.
Bill
I'll tell you
I'm sorry, go ahead,
Yeah.
Doctor, I'm sorry.
My biggest fear about this statement is that it's going to dissuade folks from taking those preventive measures, from getting those new boosters, from masking during a surge, and therefore will prolong the pandemic phase beyond where it needs to go.
Which side are you on, Bill Hanage?
Well, Jim, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what we just heard. I mean, the thing is, we're nowhere near 2021 and we're not even near 2020, but that doesn't mean we're in 2019 yet. We still have excess respiratory illness, excess deaths. And even now, at a point when things have been plateauing better than they have for quite a long time, it's nowhere like the earlier stages of the pandemic. We are still struggling to get people the help that they need. And we can expect things to get worse in the winter months because you know what they've done the last few winters? They've been worse.
You know, and by the way, the 400 a day, well, I find that to be intolerable. Just to do the math for the mathematically challenged at home, it's 150,000 people a year dying from this disease, even at this point. I won't spend time with you talking about the what I consider to be the political mistake the president made. People like Senator Cornyn from Texas, who is obviously a senior Republican, says, if this is over, then I wouldn't suspect they need any more money, even though the White House is requesting billions. I want to go back to what you said, Dr. Ranney, and just show the audience a few statistics. First booster doses in the United States of overall population, this is 5 and over, 35%. The percentage of eligible kids under 5, 7%. What do you say to a patient who has been a skeptic so far, who walks into your office and says, Joe Biden says this is over. I wasn't going to get it last week. I sure as hell am not going to get it this week.
So I talked to them about the fact that I am still seeing COVID cases on a daily basis in the emergency department. We are still admitting patients with COVID cases to the hospital. And the big thing that we know makes a difference is that booster. I also talk about how the new booster is new and improved. It is updated for these new variants. You know, for the first time since 2020, we have a shot that matches the variants that are out there, and how exciting that is. And the best I can do is to talk them through their fears and talk about the benefits, and a percentage go and get the shot, but not all.
But it's a harder nut to crack after the comment from the president on Sunday night, Dr. Ranney, is it not?
That is right. I think it's a harder nut to crack on the individual patient level, on the community level, and on the political level, as you mentioned.
So, Bill Hanage, what is the criterion for you that would cause you to say the words the president uttered, the pandemic is over? What has to happen?
Well, unfortunately, pandemics don't end with a bang and a ticker tape parade or anything like that. And that's what I've been telling people for the last few years. So for me, I think it's when we start seeing levels of background illness, which are more tolerable than they are right now. In some ways, it's pretty good that the president entered this conversation, because at some point we are going to continue to be seeing a certain amount of disease and death, which we are going to have to start dealing with and consider tolerable. But I just don't think that where we are now is where we want to be. There are still folks out there who need boosters. There are still folks out there struggling to access Paxlovid, Evusheld, and other therapies which are effective. So we should be looking to help those people, because that's what we need to do to take this and really turn it beyond the pandemic phase.
Dr. Ranney, do you have a different criterion?
No, the criteria really is that we're seeing surges in certain populations. And for a pandemic, it's that we're seeing those surges across the globe. So I'll add on, not only do we need to get folks vaccinated and boosted here in the United States, but we also have an obligation to our sister and brother countries across the world to help them get vaccinated as well.
Dr. Ranney, staying with you for a minute, there was an interesting juxtaposition in the Washington Post on Monday. There was the editorial, which was where you two are, and there was Dr. Lena Wen, who was the former health commissioner for Baltimore, saying he's right, it is over. Her argument seemed to me to be it's over because the public says it's over. And I think that was pretty much what Joe Biden was saying when he said, well, you don't see anybody wearing a mask. Isn't there something to that when so much of the public has been concerned that the public health world, you two and others, have been ahead of them on these things, that maybe it makes some sense to go where the public is, if you understand my question?
Absolutely. And that's why I start by acknowledging that we are in a different phase. We absolutely, on the part of myself, my kids, my parents, my community, we are living life differently from how we did a year ago. And that, to me, is the goal of public health, is for us to set up systems so that people can go about their daily business, stay healthy without even thinking about it. The trouble is that word, pandemic, has very specific implications in the public health as well as in the policy world. So yes, for the average person, the world is different. That doesn't mean that we've met the criteria for a pandemic to be over.
Bill Hanage, is the reason why the public, and by the way, I don't have hard data in front of me, it's anecdotal, but I think I'm right in what I just said to Dr. Ranney, is the reason why the public and you, and I think the majority of people in your world, are in different places because the messaging has been weak, for lack of a better expression, or conflicting through the last couple of years?
Well, I think partially it's actually just perception. I mean, one of the things I've always been aware of from the very start of it is that for people like me who talk to folks who are saying things like, oh my God, we ran out of ICU nurses last night, and who are readily, really in the thick of it, we've known for the last few years how bad this is. But for ordinary folks, it kind of has receded. The number you put out there, 150,000 deaths in a year, that's 3 bad flu seasons. But most folks don't remember when the last bad flu season was. And so I think that the general public can be understood for thinking about it in a different light.
I want to stay on messaging just for a second, Dr. Ranney. I played for you a minute ago Dr. Fauci saying something different. And there's a guy you just may know that has some connection to your school who was the lead COVID officer for the United States of America. He was a frequent guest on this show before he was promoted. Here is Ashish Jha, Dr. Jha. This is admittedly 2 weeks before yesterday, but nevertheless, only 2 weeks. Here he is.
The pandemic isn't over, and we will remain vigilant. And of course, we will continue to look for and prepare for unforeseen twists and turns.
For those, by the way, not on the inside, he is the, I guess, on leave dean of the School of Public Health at Brown. That, what I would argue, conflicting messaging reached epic proportions during the Trump administration. But even with serious professionals in the Biden administration, when you have Jha here, Fauci here, and Biden here, that's not good for public messaging, is it?
It's a little challenging. You know, the good side here is that Biden did acknowledge that COVID is very much amongst us still and that we still have to fight against it. It's not that he was saying mission accomplished or that COVID is over. And HHS Secretary Becerra has backed that up in the last couple of days as well. Again, this gets to me to that difference between the public health world's language, those specific meanings of what a pandemic is, and the larger world's experience. We want the world to experience regular life. That's the goal. At the same time, our goal in healthcare and public health is to prevent unnecessary suffering and death. And as Maideen Jha said, to stay vigilant.
You know, before you go, one last thing. The public health experts like you, with whom I spoke pretty regularly, especially in the first year of the pandemic, starting with Bill Hanage, would say the only bright spot, and I'm paraphrasing, in this carnage that we are living through, is we're going to learn a lot of lessons. People in positions of power, real people on the ground, are going to learn how important it is to have an affirmative, fully funded, endorsed public health system. At least from where I sit, we've learned virtually nothing. Is that an unfair characterization of where we are in September of 2022?
I think it's a little unfair for some of the people who are in positions of power. I know some of them have come to realize that it matters a lot to take action earlier rather than later. But in general, as you can see from somewhat tardy responses to monkeypox and indeed polio, we still have a lot to learn. When it comes to the end of pandemics, though, I want to close by pointing out that in 1918-19, we think of there as being 3 waves. This was the really big flu pandemic in the early 20th century. In fact, excess deaths continued for a considerable period of time after that. We just label the first 3 waves as being the pandemic. And I think we're in a similar position right now here.
That was 1917, as Donald Trump called it, Bill Hanage. Dr. Ranney, final word from you on whether we've learned lessons.
I think we've learned some lessons, but not enough. If I take off my public health hat and put on my emergency physician hat, I can say that one of my hopes early in the pandemic was that we would understand the importance of adequately funding and supporting the emergency care system. And I can say that when I show up in my ER on a Thursday or Friday night, things are worse than they've ever been. Staffing are at lower levels, burnout is higher, patient volume is, we're bursting through the seams of our waiting rooms across New England and across the country. I would love nothing more than to see us make sure that folks have access to emergency and inpatient care when and where they need it. I'm not sure that we've learned that lesson at all.
Megan Ranney, Bill Hanage, thank you much for your work and your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for tonight. Please come back tomorrow. Former federal judge Nancy Gertner and Harvard Law's Lawrence Tribe join me on their thoughts on the New York AG's lawsuit against former President Donald Trump and 3 of his children, as well as the status of the DOJ's investigation, as well as the one in Georgia. That and more tomorrow at 7. Thank you for watching. And please don't forget Ukraine nor Puerto Rico.
That's been Ahmad